Evening, everyone, and welcome to this Christmas tasting. I hope you've all had a good Christmas, and those of you who managed to catch up with family have done so. Bit like last year, we've decided to do another online tasting with my dad this time. I think it was Peter last time. So much like all the other tasting we've done, very relaxed, very laid back. We've got 4 whiskies to taste with you this evening. If you've got any questions, do send them in. There's someone far more capable than us watching this and sending over the questions. I think we've got the order we'll taste in this evening. We'll start with the Machir Bay, then we'll go to the Sanaig, and then we'll taste the Madeira Cask Matured, and then we'll finish up with the latest club bottling, which was only released just before Christmas. So I suppose I'll pass it over to you, and you can.
Okay. Thanks for the introduction.
It's a pleasure.
Hello, everybody, and a happy Christmas. I hope you all had a lovely time wherever you were in the world, and look forward to New Year in 2022. Really, I'm just going to give you a little bit of update on where we are at Kilchoman. 2021 was a great year for us, really, in terms of production and sales. And production-wise, we produced another 110,000 litres from 2020. So we produced 445,000 litres in 2021, and that was even with a very dry summer where we had to cut back on a number of occasions due to lack of water, which is getting more of a concern for us as we move forward. I think with global warming and all those things that are going on, we're certainly experiencing drier summers, and so we're making arrangements to capture more water and move from our main source. You know, all the cooling water, we've drilled some boreholes so we can take the pressure off what we use in production. So we've had a great year in production, and sales have also, been unbelievable. We're delighted with where we are, and sales have certainly surpassed where we expected them to be by the end of the year. And in 2022, we're looking to increase production again, in terms of having a full year at full production, having put in 2 more washbacks. We can now increase production, and hopefully if we have a full year, we can get up to close to sort of 625, 630,000 litres, which will be about 200,000 more than we've produced in 2021. And that's all to do with trying to forecast how sales are going to develop over the next 5-10 years. And it's always an issue for the industry, and we always get it wrong. No one can get that right. You're either producing too much or not enough. And I think we're in the fortunate position that we need to produce a bit more. We don't want to be in the position of having to allocate or slow down sales. I think that would be an issue for the company, and it's important for us to keep on going and satisfy the demand for Kilchoman going forward. We hope to complete the installation of an additional malt floor in 2021. That was always the intention. It's taken a bit longer to get that through planning. We're hoping to get planning for that in the next few months, and then it'll be a fairly straightforward build. It goes on the side of the existing malt floor, and it means we're not increasing the kiln, or we're putting everything through the same kiln, 4-ton batches, but it means that we can swap them more often, we can produce more, and we can grow more barley going forward. We have a drainage program at the farm where we can actually bring more fields back into production, and we're keen to produce as much 100% Islay from our own barley that we grow, malt and distill, mature and bottle on site as much as possible. Over the last few years, that's been more difficult as we've increased production, and that's been to the detriment of what we've actually done of our own stuff. So we're trying to increase that. The next warehouse is almost completed. We have a program of building 4 new warehouses, which will house 6,000 cars each over the next 8 years, and then that program will continue, all warehouse on site, and that's important to us so that we can keep an eye on all our maturing stock and that it is maturing on site, so shatter bottled whiskey. It's very important to us that we do the whole process on site. And now that we own the farm, which we bought in 2015, we're able to put in more warehousing, and that's something that we'll continue to do. Bottling's been very, very busy. We have now 8 people in bottling. We've installed another line, a single cask line, small batch line. So that frees up space on the automated line for our Machir Bay and Sanaig. That clearly at the moment, Machir Bay and Sanaig sales represent about 60%, 65% of all our sales. And that's increasing. So we need to free up space on that to make sure that it keeps going. And the single cask line, which is actually old bottling equipment we've had before, which we installed at the very beginning, that's back in use again. And we started using it in November to the back end of the year, and it's working incredibly well. And we've now increased the number of staff we have in bottling. COVID on Islay, like everywhere in the world, it's been challenging for every business, and especially on Islay, small island. We got away with it fairly early on in the first wave and the second wave, and then in the last 2 or 3 months, I would say that it's caught up with us, and we've had challenges with staff being off with either testing for PCR or getting COVID. Every business around the world has had the same challenges. Challenges with moving our shipments around the world, extra paperwork, delays at ports, and again with all our dry goods, getting those in time, and pricing wise, everybody's seen increases in prices all the way through the year, and we've taken the decision that we'll buy all dry goods up front as much as we possibly can, and then you've got the challenges of storage. But fortunately, we work very closely with Mundell's, a company that would do all our transport off and on the island, and we store most of our dry goods over with them in Glasgow and bring it over as we need it. But all these challenges, I'm sure everybody's had to deal with them, whatever business you're in, and you just have to work around it. And certainly we've managed that, and we've remained in production, and bottling hasn't been affected too much, though we had that slowdown when we had the challenges of not having enough bottles so we had to actually restrict the number of limited releases we sent out in September and October. But we're back on track now, and we're getting as many bottles as we want once again. So that's a roundup of what's been going on at Kilchoman. And tonight it's really about showcasing the core range, Machir Bay and Sanaig, Madeira Cask Matured, which we were due to release in October, and we postponed that until February, if I'm right in saying. February. It did go to some of our distance markets before we had the issues with glass bottles. We did send out some of the Madeira to the distance markets, Asia and North America. And so most of what we're releasing of Madeira will be going to European markets and obviously the UK. And then obviously the last sample that we're trying tonight is the Comrade. Sorry, no, it isn't the Comrade. It's the club release, the latest club release, the 2021, which we released in November.
Yeah,
am I right?
Yeah, correct.
And it was 907 bottles, something like
807.
that. 807 bottles.
Yeah.
And that obviously was very, very popular and sold out very, very quickly. And I'll be interested to hear people's views on that, and we'll have a look at that then. If there are any questions, do fire them in, and we'll deal with as many as we possibly can as we go through this evening. And so what I'll do is, unless George has got anything to say.
No, you're in full flow, so I'm just going to sit back and front row seat, really.
Full flow. I'm still in charge, by the way. Even though my 3 sons think that I'm retiring, I'm not. I'm still here and very much in charge. Well, I hope I am anyway. Machir Bay to me is the signature style of Kilchoman. We mature mainly in bourbon. I think everyone knows that I'm a fan of bourbon cask maturation, showcases Kilchoman beautifully. No hiding place, that sort of citrus, caramel. And as it gets a bit more aged, the buzz scotch and the cask influence kicks in. Machir Bay is relatively young. We don't shy away from the fact that it's sort of 4, 5, and 6-year-old in the vatting. We hope very much to increase that age profile over the next few years, but I think that it's not going to happen in the next couple of years, simply because sales have increased probably a lot faster than we imagined. And back in the old days, or certainly when we first started production, it was 60,000 litres, and then every year we've increased it, but very slowly increased it until we got to 2021, when it went to 440,000 from 235 in 2020. And it just means that we released Machir Bay in 2012. What I was expecting was that we could just increase the maturation profile quite quickly, but that is not the case as sales have increased. So, we will keep it at this sort of profile for the next couple of years, and then hopefully we can add a bit of older, mature stock to the vatting. But it's quite interesting because I do feel that the Machir Bay at this young age really showcases Kilchoman in this youthful, bright fashion, with a lot of citrus notes coming through. I really get that strongly. We add only one butt of a sherry butt, a 5-year-old sherry butt to the vatting, which is about 10% of each of our vattings. And then the rest is first fill and 1 or 2 refills, bourbon casks. And I think what it does, you're expecting something which is a bit more alcoholic, a bit more spirity, and maybe not with that depth of character. But because of our sweet floral spirit, that translates into what we have when we put it into these good quality casks that we always mature everything. We only fill first fill, and then they use once again, a percentage of use once again, and then we sell them into the industry. And the reason for that is very simple. It's because we want to release it at a relatively young age. And as we get more mature stock to release, we will then probably decide to fill more refills and more second refills, maybe, to take some of the stock further out. But what I think, it's a very light colour, no getting away from that.
I might just cut in here. Am I allowed to talk?
You can cut in there. You can cut in.
Question about casks. So you talked about the bourbon cask and how you feel that is a great way of maturing Kilchoman whiskey. Sourcing bourbon cask back in 2005 going forward, have you always used the same cask supplier? I'm asking this question, I know the answer, but I feel that. But have you always used the same cask supplier, or have you moved around a bit?
No, as a lot of you know, Jim Swan was my mentor, the person that held my hand in the first 5 or 6 years, and he was very insistent, quite rightly so, that we filled into the best quality. And when he means that, he's the first fill from one distillery. But we weren't able to get a contract with a distillery when we first started. They wanted to see us have a track record. They didn't want to sell to a new distillery, and we were one of the first new distilleries for a number of years, and I think their concerns were that we weren't going to be around for very long. So for the first 18 months, we bought from Speyside Cooperage. The Cooperage is up in Scotland, and we got very good quality casks. There's nothing wrong with those casks, but there's no sort of continuity in terms of supply of these casks, and getting them all from one distillery in Kentucky was crucial. Jim was very insistent, and we did that, and he had very good relationships with Buffalo Trace. So in late 2006, maybe 2007, we started to buy casks from Buffalo Trace, full container quantities, made up casks delivered to us, and we filled them, and we've continued that ever since that. So very good, consistent casks in terms of the character of the spirit maturing in them. And I think that's crucial. It makes it much easier for us at the distillery to pick out the casks that we want to use in vattings. And it gives all that floral note that we're looking for. You get the colour coming through a lot quicker than refill casks. And we love it, and we will continue to buy mainly first fill.
And the fruitiness that you've got in the Machir Bay there, so you've got almost like tropical fruits coming out. Well, I always get, would you say that's the signature Kilchoman style that you always look to distill from the early days?
Yeah,
was
I
that
think
was that because we're tasting 50 ppm whiskey here. It's relatively high in phenol content, but you don't really get it in the whiskey there as you probably would expect.
I think it's very much to do with the character of the spirit. Coming off the stills has allowed us to, and the cask play a big part, but I think the character of the spirit. Jim Swan, I remember Jim when we first started distilling in 2005. It was the first spirit man off the stills. He just turned and said, "Look, if we look after this spirit, in other words, put it into good quality wood, we'll be able to release it 3 years of age." And he was true to his word. And I think it was very much to do with the shape and size of our stills. More copper contact, tall narrowing, swan neck with a boil valve for more reflux. Distilling quite slowly, then you're collecting the lighter, fruitier alcohols, and that is borne true. And I think nowadays, there's no doubt that everybody is producing very good spirit because of more knowledge in the industry, and people understand how to get a style they're looking for. You can never get it exactly, but I think it's very much to do with the combination of the character of the spirit, very clean, very floral, very creamy, and the good quality wood. And I think that combination is hugely important, being able to release at a relatively young age. And that was key to any new distillery. It's very tough to take your spirit out for 5-10 years, and all those costs involved in producing spirit and not selling and never having no income. So that was crucial. And all distillers and new distillers are certainly doing that. It's not to say that age statement whiskey isn't a very good thing for consumers, because you know exactly what you're getting. But we try and give as much information about the age and the vatting through the various QR codes. Is that right? QR codes that you certainly can get all the information about vatting. But for me, Machir Bay just showcases Kilchoman in a youthful way. And now we're able to do older releases, obviously limited releases, Loch Gorm, 100% Islay, and single casks, which really showcase Kilchoman now with full maturation. And it's great to be able to do that now after having been in this situation where most of our releases have been relatively young.
Machir Bay, as far as batches, vattings, how many vattings of the Machir Bay are you doing throughout the year? And also, when you're doing that, is it important to try and get a sort of, you're never going to get them identical year on year, but is it something that you're very conscious of maintaining?
We try and we do small vattings. It's not big vattings, and we did this year about 20 vattings for Machir Bay, and more than I was expecting. What we try to do is we keep the same percentages for each vatting. We bring all the casks together, we vat them, we taste them before deciding that it's good to go. Then we reduce them and taste them again, and we also compare them alongside the previous vatting. And I think they're relatively close, and that's the main thing. They're never going to be absolutely the same, and we're not looking to do that, because I think what we're looking to showcase is they're done in vattings. We don't add colouring. And some casks won't have so much colour in them as others. Certainly the sherry casks, some have a deeper, richer colour than others, but we just have to go with that. And I think it's important people understand that we don't try and get it the same, but it's pretty much, it's the same as close as we can get it each time.
And I suppose the consistency of casks that you're getting makes that. I'm not saying that,
I think with bourbon casks, it's easier. Sherry casks are much more difficult to work with. You have to try every single one before you get one that is going to perform the way you want it to. But sherry plays a massive part in what we do, but bourbon, to me, plays the bigger part, and it showcases all those sort of maritime, smoky, peaty characteristics that are so well known from Islay.
Yeah, well, we've got a couple of questions coming in here. Whiskey Julian's enjoying the Machir Bay with the chocolate, lime and sea salt chocolate from Cocoa and Edinburgh, which is always a good combination. Brian says if he's correct, apparently you're never retiring. That's always something to look forward to.
Apparently I'm not, until I start losing my marbles.
Who gets to decide when you're losing them?
I don't know.
Okay, that's up for debate. And then also, how often do you reuse the bourbon casks? So we're buying fresh casks in. How often do you reuse them before they go to the market?
We use a percentage of them again, only once more at the moment. Sometimes we use them for a second time, but on the whole, it's just refills. So we bring them over fresh, fill them, empty them, and refill them. And when you're considering, for Machir Bay, most of the casks that we're using for the vattings are only 4, 5, 6 years of age, so they still got a lot of life left in them. So they're offering still a huge amount of influence to the spirit when we refill them.
I suppose just to move on to Sanaig.
Yeah.
So Machir Bay was launched in 2012, and then we just were selling the Machir Bay as our constant permanent release, our flagship whiskey. And then in 2016, we were looking to add another bottling to the range on a permanent basis. With the Sanaig, because we're not an old distillery, we are looking for showing how cask influence plays a massive part in the whiskey. And tasting the Machir Bay and the Sanaig side by side, the only difference that we're going to have here in the glass is the casks being used in the vattings. Yeah. So we've had 90% bourbon, 10% Oloroso sherry with the Machir Bay, and then we flipped it slightly on its head and have predominantly in the region of 70% sherry cask matured, 30% bourbon influence. And the first thing you'll notice is the colour, and then that lovely sherry influence on the nose, and maybe slightly softer with the peat as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think what we thought was that it was important to have another core expression and sitting alongside Machir Bay, and that's why we released this in 2014. Both at 46%, but very different. So the same spirit, absolutely the same spirit off the stills, and then the cask influence really kicks in a major way. And I'm a believer that 60 to 70% of the character of the whiskey comes from the casks you use, and you'll all be familiar with the different cask types we've used, other than bourbon and sherry, and the influences from those casks. What a difference they bring to the character of Kilchoman. So with Sanaig, we sort of looked at how we were going to do this, butts, hogsheads, and then I went hogsheads because of the influence from the sherry casks. Hogsheads are that much smaller than butts, and we wanted this big hitting sherry influence at a relatively young age. Similar age again to Machir Bay, 4, 5, 6 years of age, and sherry hogsheads, Oloroso sherry hogsheads, 70% influence, and 30% bourbon influence. And just on the color, I mean, it just shows how much deeper and richer the color is. And these are very intense casks that we buy from Jose Miguel Martin in Seville in Spain, and we've again used them for all our sherry casks right from the word go. Tremendous company with just the best quality casks you ever get your hands on. A real workaholic who shows a real passion for the casks that he sends to the whiskey industry in Scotland. And we're not the only ones who use him. There's a number of other distilleries in Scotland that use Miguel Martin for their sherry cask. Glenfarclas are one of the ones that you all know, and what a fantastic whiskey they produce. So we buy hogsheads for Sanaig. And I just get this sort of stewed fruits character, but almost there is a sort of crushed summer fruits. There is peat and smoke and maritime character on the back of the nose as well, but it's more approachable maybe for some people. If you're a first-time drinker, you can approach Sanaig more easily maybe than Machir Bay. And I understand that, and especially in Asian markets, there's no doubt that sherry influence plays a big part there as far as sales concerned. That's not why we did it, but we wanted to showcase Kilchoman in a different light, and there's no doubt that this showcases Kilchoman in a completely different light.
And I think it's interesting now in the recent years, we've seen Sanaig becoming increasingly popular. Not just in far Asian markets, sort of globally, it's become
and
popular.
That causes us an issue as well, because we were looking to to have this at a slightly higher price. We don't fill as many sherry casks, and sales have just been. Well, I was going to say ridiculous. It's not ridiculous. It's lovely to see how well Sanaig's been received, but then it gives us an issue in terms of a stock profile. So we've had to start over the last 3 or 4 years. We filled more sherry, and we will continue to do that because we see Sanaig as being very, very popular in many markets, and we understand that, but we're still very keen to push Machir Bay harder than Sanaig, just because of the cask profile that we have in the warehouse, and because I'm a great believer that in the long run, bourbon will have a bigger part to play. But see, I understand why people enjoy this, because it's how approachable it is, and it's a wonderful dram.
Nice little bit of spice as well that you get on the back of the palate. There's a few more questions that have come in. John McClellan, who was distillery manager, the influence that he had in the time that when he came from Bunnahabhain to ourselves, because he was around with the likes of the sort of decisions for the Machir Bay and the Sanaig, wasn't he?
Yeah, very much so. I mean, so he was, John was a massive influence in the short time he's with us, and with all his experience at Bunnahabhain, and just a really approachable person who everyone knew in the industry and around the world, in fact. And he played a massive role in launching these two products, and for how we were going to release them and the percentages that we were going to use, and it's a legacy for him that they've been so popular.
Yeah, and also another question, you talked about sherry casks being hard to work with. Yeah, we've got the Madeira to taste, but also we filled ports to turn, various different wine casks. Are they harder to work with than the port casks, the sherry casks, sorry, or are they sort of on par?
No, I think everyone thinks that these different cask types we've used have been great fun, and they've worked. On the whole, they've worked really well. And people ask us, why don't we fill more of them? I think I'm quite traditional in my approach, and I think that it's fun to work with these different cask types. But the thing that does change is the profile, the character, and the profile of the whiskey as it's maturing in these different cask types. Because each time you go and buy a batch of these casks, they might be slightly different, and more different than maybe the bourbon casks and the sherry casks. Don't ask me why that is, but it is the case. There's certain casks that have worked better than others. There's no doubt about that. STR, the Shave, Toast and Recharge cask, which Jim Swan was very at the forefront of coming up with this different way of rejuvenating casks. These are Portuguese red wine casks, and giving them a lift, and they've certainly worked beautifully well. There's summer fruits character coming from those. Calvados casks, actually, something that we're now allowed to showcase, have worked very well, and cognac as well. So, and mezcal and tequila we filled, and I think those are very interesting because that peaty character certainly from the mezcal casks have come through very well. But we've chosen on occasion to do finishes rather than full maturation because they tend to work better with certain cask types. Sauternes certainly, I believe, has worked better as a finish. But we'll continue this experiment because I love showcasing our spirit. We're very fortunate that our spirit works so well with different cask types at full maturation, not necessarily finishing.
And also, I suppose we've got to mention that the Machir Bay and Sanaig are both 46% non-chill filtered natural colour. So everything that we release is natural colour and non-chill filtered, whether that is the port cask or the Madeira. So you really do get a true representation of that, what the cask is giving you, which has always been important, I think.
Yeah, I think that a lot of distilleries are now doing it, whereas in the old days, well, certainly still in some cases, 40% is still used. At that strength, you do need to chill filter, which is taking it below sort of freezing to a certain extent, just to get rid of the proteins that might cause a haze. Nothing wrong with that haze, but it doesn't look great in the bottle on the shelf. And natural color is something that I think more and more people are showcasing. That means that you're just showcasing the character of coming directly from the cask and no additional caramel coloring. And therefore you're just getting it straight from the cask with a bit of coarse filtration.
Two more questions, then we'll move on to the next whiskey. But with the sales of sherries declining, will you always be able to obtain casks from Miguel Martin?
Oh yeah, no, I don't think there's any doubt. I think sherry sales have been declining for 25 years. And it's a great shame that more sherry isn't drunk, because it's a fantastic drink. I drank some over Christmas. I introduced it to my sons, and they weren't.
We weren't
overly
impressed.
But a nice dry Manzanilla is fantastic. Look, I think it's a great shame more sherry isn't drunk around the world. Hopefully, it will make a comeback at some point. But the sherry industry has changed tack, and they realise there is a growing demand for sherry casks, so that they're filling it with sherry and then dumping the sherry and sending the casks to us. So that will continue. There won't be a shortage of them. I think, excuse me, the issue is demand for sherry casks and whether they can keep up with that demand. And prices are rising, more so in sherry casks than in bourbon casks, but we'll continue to buy them. Because they're a great way of showcasing our whiskey.
Another question is coming in about the Sauterne and STR. I know the Sauterne we've moved more into using it for finishes, but then also STR we have filled a lot of STR casks that we're going to push out for full maturation, as it's something that's worked extremely well. So there is a bit of a timeline, but we will be releasing STR a bit more of a hopefully bigger style at some point, but it takes a little bit of time to let these casks mature in the warehouse. But I can't remember the figure exactly, but we've got quite a lot.
But no, we've got a number of over a few years. We filled in 2018 and 19, and when we did a release of the STR full maturation, it was 7 years of age, and I think anything younger than that doesn't work as well as I would like. So it will be certainly 7-8 years maybe before we release that as a full maturation. But it works beautifully well, and it'll be interesting to compare it with the last release we did.
I suppose it also, another one that we've done a previous release of is the Madeira.
Yeah.
So we did I think it was 2015 or
I can't remember.
2015 or 2016.
3 years of age.
Yeah, Madeira, 3 years of age, and this was the one that was slightly delayed, as my dad mentioned earlier on. It was meant to be released at the end of the year, but we had a slight problem getting hold of our bottles. So this will be hitting the market else globally, apart from those few markets that got it in February. And this is slightly older, just over 5 years of age. This one, so it's a vatting of 46 casks, I believe.
Yeah, it was around about 17,000 bottles at 50% alcohol. So slightly higher strength. No particular reason other than it takes it. All our whiskies take it at a higher strength, but 46% allows us to release a little bit more. And I just get sort of this barbecued character on the nose. I still get
freshness.
All the freshness there. Well. Barbecue on a beach, maybe sort of maritime, sort of bacon, sort of not burnt bacon.
Burnt bacon,
maybe.
Burnt bacon on a beach somewhere on the west coast of Scotland.
On Machir Bay, obviously. And then on the palate, I get sort of the citrus notes come through to me. They're there in abundance. It's clean and it's fresh, but it has a different depth of character. And to me, it's sort of not stewed fruits here. It's not sort of spiciness. It is this sort of barbecued style, that sort of Marmite-y style that comes through. It's worked really well. Now that's only 5 years of age. Oh. And you could argue that it could take it out a bit further. There's no doubt about that. But at 5 years age, it's youthful, it's fresh, and it's showing all those characteristics from these wonderful Madeira casks.
Almost like a sort of salted caramel, chocolatey style coming through as well.
Yeah. And at 50%, there's no real alcohol burn. You don't necessarily need water. And I don't think I need water with that one particularly. But some people might, and a few drops of water does no harm at all. It doesn't have the same richness of colour as the Sanaig, but it has a distinctly different character. And I think this is why I bang on about the cask influence. And there's absolutely no doubt with the Madeira, and there's the same with the port. We're just sort of deciding in 2022 what other releases we will be doing alongside the Loch Gorm, which we always do, and the 100% Islay. The back at the end of the year, we might be doing a port cask matured, a 7 to 8 year old port cask matured, which is coming on beautifully. Or we're also contemplating doing Machir Bay cask strength, which again we postponed at the back end of last year due to the bottle shortage. So we might be doing that. So it's about deciding later on in the year. So the beginning of the year, Madeira, this will be released in February. We're looking at February, I think.
Yes,
I'm not sure of the date. And then the Lockgorn will be March. And then the back end of the year, we'd definitely be doing the 100% Isla again, and maybe the port, or maybe a cask strength Machir Bay. The cask strength Machir Bay to me is a wonderful dram. It's been massively popular. It showcases the Machir Bay at the full strength with nothing stripped out of it at all, and then you add the water to your own individual tastes. And that's how I believe whiskey should be drunk. But 46, 50%, we've got more of it to share around. But for me, I'm looking forward to doing a full strength core range at some stage in the future. I can't tell you when, but that's something that I'd like to add to the portfolio at some point.
50%. A lot of the wine casks or sort of experimental casks you release at 50%. Is there a particular reason why you pick that strength, or apart from just having a little bit more cask influence? Is there something you feel that works well?
I'm brutally honest. I shouldn't be brutally honest. I
think
it's about
why change something that you?
It's about showcasing it in a different format and a little bit more strength. As I was saying, it takes it at that extra 5%, and we can do that with the limited releases more than we can do with the Machir Bay and Sanaig. We don't want to be bottling our Machir Bay and Sanaig at 50. We have less to release, and therefore, then we have problems with our stock. And I think Madeira and any of the other limited releases, I know we released Lockgorn at 46%, but certainly 100% Isla and other releases we've done at 50, and it works really well, that extra 5%. And it's about showcasing it at a slightly higher strength.
And being fully matured, you think it's got that lovely influence
and I mean,
of the cask as well.
At 5 years of age, that's why our spirit character, which has a floral sweet character, at a relatively young age, I think it works beautifully well. And the argument will always go on about, age against sort of young against old. And as it matures, 20 years, 25, 30 years, is it getting better in cask? Not necessarily. There are some wonderful old whiskies, but I would suggest that sometimes Isla whiskies are better drunk relatively young, just to showcase all those characteristics that everyone enjoys.
And I suppose that's where the refill casks come into play, is for laying down stock for slightly longer.
Yeah. So second or third fill casks and work better because they take a longer to actually mature through.
But you wouldn't see yourself maturing one of these wine casks for an extended period of time.
Well, I think you could do. And now that we know what works better than some, we might well experiment and take some of these out further in terms of age profile. But I think what we've tried to do is just showcase these limited releases, all about showcasing our whiskies in a different light, and doing full maturation. It's not something a lot of distilleries do. They tend to do more finishes, but full maturation, we're lucky it works very well with our profile of spirit.
I just put a few drops of water into the Madeira, and the fruitiness really then starts to really come out, almost like a bit of a peach that comes out as well, to add to your barbecue on the beach in the sun.
Yeah.
But no, it's a couple of more questions that have come in over when it comes to casks. You sort of casks that aren't working, monitoring casks. Is that something that you do with Robin, the production manager? Just go through and taste predominantly the experimental casks and the sherry, or
it's all casks. But on the whole, the bourbons tend to come through okay. We might have to leave some a bit longer than others. But sherry and other experimental cask types, we've had to take some out of casks. They haven't been performing, and it's sherry's. Some sherry casks that we bought early on weren't working at all, and we've had to decant them into fresher bourbon butts, or we've put them into hogsheads. And we continue to do that, and we continue to monitor all the casks maturing in the warehouse. And Robin and he's extraordinary how he knows where everything is and how it's performing. He's the one who keeps an eye on it, and between us, we work out what we need to do with anything that's not working particularly well. What we're going to do with it in terms of rejuvenate it. Tends to go back into bourbon or another sherry cask, depending on what we're looking at. Bourbons we've been a bit lucky with. Sherry we've occasionally had to tweak them and take them out of a cask that's not been performing particularly well.
I suppose the final whiskey we're going to taste this evening is our club bottle. So the club, for those who aren't aware, we have the Kilchoman Club, and every year for the last 10 years we've been doing a bottling exclusively for the members of the club. And I suppose it's a chance for you to go in the warehouse and try and pick something either that's potentially to be released in years to come. I know we've used it to do previous releases of the Madeira, etc. And this year you selected 3 2008 sherry hogsheads. And I suppose that's another example of casks that you decanted into hogsheads from butts that you didn't feel working as you might have expected.
No, I mean, I think they were very disappointing, and we needed to do something. And I decided that at that point that we would decant them into hogsheads to really sort of give them some depth of character, which they were lacking after a few years in these butts. And it's always difficult. We've got nearly 12,000 casks maturing in the warehouse. You can't open up every single one.
No.
And check and see, but we try and keep an eye on as much as we possibly can.
But I suppose when you're looking at these slightly older casks, when you were tasting a 2008 and you decanted it in 2016, I think it was that because you tasted it as a potentially going into maybe a Lochgorm and you thought actually that's not quite where it should be? Is that?
Yeah, I think it was something that Robin came and said that this isn't doing it, but it was earmarked for Lochgorm probably, and it wasn't performing. So we decided to do something with it. And I think every club release, I think we've done one every year since 2011. So this is the 10th release. We always look for something that's slightly different, slightly special. For our club members, it's always difficult to satisfy everybody who wants a bottle. We never get that right.
And this one was extremely popular. This was extremely popular. There we did 807 bottles of it and released it in November. And I think it went in sort of 45 minutes.
45 minutes, which is probably a record.
Maybe a little bit too quick, but it's we've now got 25 to nearly 30,000 members of the club. Sadly, we don't have the stocks to be able to release a bottle for every single person. But I think when you taste, we're tasting a 13-year-old Kilchoman here, which is something that is very, very rare, I suppose, at the moment on the open market. And it really does have that lovely softness to it. Again, 50 parts per million. And for me, the peat is just very, very soft and subtle in that.
It doesn't have that big sherry influence. It maybe you're expecting from spending a few years in hogsheads, first fill hogsheads, after being in not such good butts. But it has a slightly lighter, fresher feel to it than you maybe have expected from Lochgorm casks or even individual casks we've released of an age. We've actually done a Oloroso sherry butt in the shop as an exclusive.
Face bottling
and the face bottle. So this has a little bit more of a delicate character, I believe. 52.6%. So a little bit of water needs to be added to just get taste behind the alcohol and to just let the bouquet develop in the glass. But I think this has worked really well. It's slightly different, and this is what we're actually, Robin and I, when we looked at this, we said, Christ, this is actually quite interesting. It's different. It's not maybe the sort of usual Oloroso sherry casks that we've released.
Intensely fruity.
Yeah,
so
fruity, really fruity. Quite light, and the peat, as you say, is there in abundance. And it tends to actually shine through more on sherry casks than it does on bourbon casks, I believe. That's actually, most people would think it would actually shine through on bourbon casks, in that the sherry maybe masks some of the peaty character, but it really does come through. I think the thing is with sherry casks and smoke and peat and maritime character, maybe the sherry can mask all those influences quite a lot with, and that's why maybe we don't fill quite as many sherry casks as they do further north in Speyside. I mean, Bunnahabhain have always filled a lot of sherry casks, but then they tend to be fairly unpeated or very, very lightly peated, and those are sublime whiskies. With a heavier character of peat, you have a few more issues to deal with in terms of the sherry and the peat influence and getting that balance right. But look, this has worked really well. It showcases Kilchoman in a slightly different light to what a lot of our sherry releases have done in the past.
But again, at that 42.6%, it's a lovely 52. Sorry, it's been a long Christmas. I spent a lot of time with you.
Yeah.
Actually, someone's commented how you seem to be a lot happier these days. Now you're not doing any marketing.
Oh, is that right? Well, I don't have to do as much travelling.
No.
And I'm delighted I don't. Well, no one's done a lot of travelling in the last year and a half, 2 years, but certainly I'm enjoying being at the distillery and delving into the warehouses to select the casks.
I suppose you've gone back to before building the distillery. You were doing independent bottling, and cask management is something you enjoy a lot more than being out.
Yeah, no, I mean that's what I've always enjoyed, and I let the young fitter members of the family to do the travelling.
Well, the sales are just gone in one direction, really, isn't it? The last year or so. But if anyone's got any more questions, do send them in. We will get through them as before we disappear. How long ago were the casks for the club release selected? So when it comes to a release like the club, do you select them?
We select them probably a few months in advance, probably for this release we selected them in July, August time, and picked them out. We had an eye on these casks for a while, and I sort of already had in the back of my mind that we might use these for something special, and then club release comes along and we can go and pick them out. So we're checking our casks, the older ones, quite regularly. We're in the fortunate position that we have 16-year-old whiskey now, and we are doing one or two sort of special limited edition single casks or whatever for our markets around the world, and these are some of them that we felt the club would be excited by.
Yeah, no, and I think it is, as you said, it showcases Kilchoman in that different way, and it's I think Robin did a good job.
Yeah. Robin,
Well, it is amazing. You go into the warehouse and you've got Robin's put crosses on casks and notes on them saying "See me," maybe in 6 months' time, and things like that. He has got this unbelievable knowledge of where everything is.
And in all the warehouses that we've got now, we've got on site. We've got four warehouses on site. We're just about to complete another one, and he knows where everything is, which is extraordinary. But then I suppose he spends a lot of time in the warehouses, so it's understandable in a way. But he's certainly someone that I rely heavily on when it comes to just checking and making sure everything's doing as it should do.
Yeah, and if anyone is not a member of the club, I think that we'll pop a link up here before we disappear so that you can sign up to be a member. And then again, we will release another club bottling next year, and hopefully you'll get a chance to join that. But I think we'll finish up, let you go back to enjoying your Christmases.
Yeah, so I'd just like to say thanks very much for your support, everybody who's been following Kilchoman and buying our bottles. Very, very much appreciated. And I'd like to wish you all a very, very happy new year. And hopefully in 2022, we'll be able to see and welcome more of you to the distillery. It's been a tricky time for everyone involved in the distilling business. In terms of visitor numbers, we haven't seen many foreign visitors, and it'd be great to get back on track in that regard. So thanks very much indeed for all your support, and we look forward to welcoming as many as you as possible to the distillery in the future.
And just on that note as well, we will release more information about when we'll be back up fully open and be able to get tours, etc. And if we're going to do more of these online tastings, I know that they're still remaining popular, and you love to wheel you out occasionally to do them.
I do enjoy it. They think I'm a grumpy old bastard, but actually I do enjoy these. I remember when we did our first live tasting at the beginning of COVID, and Catherine who's in the background here, who holds my hand on these occasions. In terms, she held a camera in my face, and I was talking to nobody. I didn't believe.
And might not be.
No, I'm still might not be. And then we started sending out sample packs to people, and that really took off. And it's great that, you know, instead of just talking you through samples that I'm tasting, which you can't taste, to send out tasting packs has been a revolution in terms of getting in front of people and talking to people who are actually online and are asking questions and being able to taste along with us. And it's just been a brilliant way of keeping in touch with our consumers around the world. And we'll continue to do it, but we're looking forward to getting out and coming and visiting markets and getting in front of people face to face, because it's still a people business and it's still about talking and getting in front of people. But certainly this has allowed us to keep in touch with everybody. So thanks very much indeed for joining us. It's been hugely appreciated. And look, have a great new year, and let's hope we can all meet up in the future, in the very near future. Okay.
So thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks very much indeed for joining us. Take care. Bye.
Bye.